Hey there, everyone. Lee Walsh here. We're going to get started in just a second. We still have a lot of people signing on. I appreciate everybody joining us on this Saturday morning, right? Let me ask you, can you see my camera? It almost looks like it dropped out on me. Am I visible to you? Either hit and chat or unmute and say yay.
Yes, we can see you, Lee.
Okay, great. Thanks. For some reason on my side, it disappeared. We'll just give it a few more seconds. I'm going to play this quick couple of minute video by a guy named Ed Milet, who talks a lot about extra effort, and his focus is the power of one more.
One thing I think we also want is an immediate result. And I talk about this in the book. Maybe this will be the last little thing I'll share with you. But I went to a birthday party as I was writing the book, and it was for a young boy. And they had a piñata. We've all been to especially living in California. You know, the piñata. And so what they did is they took each of these little guys, they blindfolded them and spun them around, and they're all dizzy and they're swinging and they're not even near the piñata. That's life. A lot of times you feel like, man, I'm blind. I don't even know where I'm swinging right now, but I'm swinging. And so each kid hit the piñata and the candy didn't come out. And so they take the blindfold off. That kid got tired. The next little boy came up, spun him around. So like 7 of them hit this piñata. No candy came out. The last boy, the smallest boy, the youngest boy there, they throw the blindfold on him. They spin him around. He's swinging too. That's life. You just sort of swinging, right? They finally point him at the piñata. He hits the piñata just once. Bam. All the candy comes out. And all the kids jump on and celebrate. And I'm watching that and I'm going, now who broke the piñata? Was it the last shot or was it the cumulative blows of each of the shots on the piñata? Well, we all know the answer. It was the cumulative shots. Life's a lot like that, man. That we're taking shots, but we don't see any physical progress. But every one more we're doing is compound pounding progress. And in life, you have to be willing to buy into what is invisible progress. Most people quit on their dream, quit on their vision before the candy comes out. And what you and I didn't do is quit. We just kept swinging. And eventually the candy comes out. The candy could be your bliss, your joy, your financial success, your notoriety, your contribution. But most people are hitting the piñata of their life and there's no evidence it's working. But the truth is there's a compound pounding effect in life that if you keep hitting your life's piñata, if you'll stick around, there'll be some candy come out.
The power of one more, everyone. Ed Milet. Go and grab this book if you haven't already. It's going to be a life changer. I mean, you can just feel the energy coming off this human being. Honestly, I want you to go read this book. I want you to go listen to the podcast if you don't already. The first book was called Max Out Your Life as well, the Max Out podcast. Ed, you are just, your energy is infectious. I don't know how anyone can't listen to you, read from you, hear from you, and not feel like they need to change their life. Like, you've just given me a list of number ones that I'm going to do. One more. I hope that you keep coming back on the show. I hope that we keep getting to connect offline. I hope that we get to, keep spending one more day, one more phone call, one more time together, because
So grateful for you, bro. I love you.
Really grateful, man. Thank you so
man.
much.
One thing I think.
Okay, Ed Milet, that lets everybody have some time to get in.
Hey, Lee, how do you spell Ed Millett last name?
I'm sorry, say that again.
How do you spell Ed Millett last name?
Mylettt. Milet.
Millett.
Yeah.
Thank you so
He
much.
has a lot of stuff up on YouTube, does a lot of free stuff, written a lot of books. A little pumped up for Saturday morning. Coffee or not, right? Just saw in chat, Joe Doss, I appreciate you letting me know you figured out the chat GPT stuff. Let's get started on this workshop. Again, I appreciate everybody joining us on a Saturday. We had to reschedule. If you were on the call on Thursday, I got into about 10, 15 minutes, spilled a big cup of coffee all over my desk. And while I was trying to tell everybody, wait a second, I must have hit, have you ever hit like your phone or your keyboard or the TV remote just right and it does something crazy? Well, that's what happened to me. Luckily, Cheyenne was on the call and took over and tried to answer some questions until we could figure out I could not get back on. So let's get started with this workshop. In a short period of time, we're going to cover a lot of things today. We're going to talk about how an investor looks at fix and flip projects, some of the language we use and how we back into things. We probably don't start where you start looking at the project. And we'll talk a bit about financial leverage and how surprisingly just using money in a different way for the same project can have a 1, 2, or 3 times positive effect on your return on your investment. First, let me hit a little bit of housekeeping here. We have a mute button. If you would make sure you're muted, to stop barking dogs, sirens, whatever the heck is going on. That's what it looks like when it's muted. You just have to click on it. It's click on, click off. The other is the chat. We're going to stop 2 or 3 times during this and just answer questions and go over anything that if I went over too fast or you want to talk more about it. But pop stuff in the chat. When we stop, we'll go over it and see if we can move on that way. Chat for most people, you see just as a little chat icon, but if you're on a phone or maybe a tablet, it's going to look a little different. You have to click on the 3 little dots to get to the menu where you're going to see chat pop up along with a couple of other things. One last thing is your view of what you can control of how you see the screen. In your upper right of your Zoom, you should see the view icon. And if you click on that, you can see different views. I always suggest play around with it a little bit, find the view that you like best. We don't push that view to you. We can share a screen, pop ourselves up in the corner while we're sharing. That's about all we can control on our side. What this is not, you always have to keep compliance and compliance attorneys happy. We're not giving legal advice. We're not telling you how or financial advice of how you should do things. We're showing you things other people have done, things we've seen done, and things we know how to get things done. But you have to use the information at your own risk. Always consult with professionals if you're not sure. And so with that said, again, I'm Lee Walsh. I see some names I recognize on the call and some of you I don't know. I've worked with construction and renovation financing for the majority of my financing career. I've always had a focus on investor programs and programs for the self-employed. And a lot of times those are that people wear both hats. I did my first flip project as we know it, the way the programs have kind of evolved about 7 years ago. Back then, there were very few regional investors that were doing short-term renovation loans. Other than that, ones that had real structure to them. When you went back to them, you knew you were going to get the same deal, the same rate, the same program. Other than that, it was the private guys lending money out of their own pocket, writing a check. The good thing about that is when you build up a relationship like that, it's easy to get funding. The hard part is the terms can change from deal to deal, from how hungry they are to make a loan or not. And sometimes they're just tapped out. They have to wait till some loans pay off before they can lend more money. So the difference is starting 6, 7, 8 years ago, this part of the industry became a new sector. A lot of the loans that we do, we sell into the secondary market into mortgage-backed securities. Even the short-term ones go into transactional funding like that. And just investors, whether they be insurance companies or Wall Street, that want that servicing for the loans, and that's what they want. I've been in the business about 30 years. Servicing is the last thing I want to get involved in. I used to service everything I did. And a couple of companies that I owned, we serviced the majority of it, and then maybe sold it 2 or 3 years later. Servicing now is its own business, and unless it's your specialty, good luck. We started Radar Mortgage getting close to 6 years. We thought we'd do things a little different. We don't get in everybody's face waving rate sheets and programs and telling you how great our processor is, even though we do have good people. We think contributing, giving back. If we know how to do something and we can show you how to do it, help you understand it, whether it be social media marketing, business planning, some of the unique products out there in the marketplace like this one, that's the way we try to make friends. And everything I'm going to cover with you today is not specific to my company. Yeah, we do this program, but there are a number of solid companies out there that do this same program, and some of us sell into the same package. With that said, let's get started here. A fix and flip loan. There's a number of things to cover. We're going to go through some of them pretty quickly, and then we're going to give you examples to go over that. So we're going to talk about what a flip is, what the financing is, what are the lending terms that an investor lender uses when we talk amongst ourselves. And if you understood those terms and could talk that way, you'd get a lot further with the investor. Budgeting and planning and managing of that and how important it is. And we'll show you how investors like to see it structured. And we'll talk a bit about return on investment and how to use financial leverage to improve that. And then we're going to do a real life example, and we're going to take $200K and we're going to invest it 3 different ways. Probably the 3 most common ways that flips are done, and let you decide which way is better for you. And it's not always the same way. A flip financing is basically a bridge loan. It's something that's been around forever. In the last 7, 8, 10 years, fix and flip has become the term it gets. HGTV and the like have a lot to do with that, right? It's basically a short-term loan to purchase and renovate a property with the intention of either selling it when you're done, taking your profit and doing another one, or refinancing when it's completed and turn it into a rental. And, a lot of people that are working the BRRRR method. A little more about the program. How does it work? Depending on the project and the size of it, 9 to 18-month terms. Interest only is really common. rarely see any that are anything other than that. Never a prepayment penalty. These are short-term bridge loans. You're expected to pay it off as soon as you can. You can get up to 90% of the as-is purchase price, 100% of renovation. That's not entry level. If it's your first flip, you're not going to get terms that great. Your terms will be a little less. These are based mostly on credit and your experience and the actual project that is on the table. They're not all the same. A little different than just putting carpets, paint, and appliances on a property versus gutting it, changing room design, new roof, new plumbing and electrical. Those are different. Closing times. These can close pretty quick if you're organized. If you're not organized, they take forever. They can close in 10 to 15 business days, not uncommon. We've done it. Rates currently, the way the market's going, this is probably old, is probably closer to 10 to 14%. We've seen a rate jump again in the last week. Everybody keeps thinking it's capping. I'm not psychic. I'm not going to take the bet. What do you need to qualify on these loans? These are business loans. These are not consumer loans. This is not Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA, USDA. We title these generally to an LLC because it is a business loan. And so we're going to need to see the formation docs and the operating agreement to make sure whoever's taking title legally can. We need a purchase contract or a current mortgage statement if you're doing a refi. There's a product a lot of people don't take advantage of, is you can do a short-term bridge loan on an existing property. You got a property that you don't owe much on. It really needs upgraded. You could really improve it, increase the rent on it. It needs all that work done. You can do that on these loans. We generally just need proof of funds for 2 months bank statements. We don't do W-2s, pay stubs, tax returns on these programs. We're not looking, sometimes we ask for a financial statement, an unaudited financial statement. And that's about as far as we go. Again, no tax returns, W-2s, pay stubs. 640 is kind of the entry level on score. The better the score, the better the terms. And you always need a scope of work, including a budget breakdown. And we're going to get into that towards the end of this pretty deeply and go through it and give you real examples of what it should look like. Here's the renovation. I like to show people this list and go, okay, hold on. Here's a number of terms, 15 of them that we use that are not, most of them are almost specific to this type of loan other than things like closing costs and selling costs. But most of them are specific to this kind of transaction. I'm going to breeze through these real quick. And the reason I'm not going to stop and talk long is after we do this, we're going to go through some examples and use these terms. Then we'll take some talks and some questions on it after we've laid them out and then use them in some examples that we're going through to show you. Purchase acquisition price. That's simple, right? The cost to buy the property as is. That has nothing to do with the improvements that are going to be on it. A word lenders use internally a lot and don't talk to you a lot about, and that is the cap, the purchase cap. There are caps or limiters on the purchase price, the renovation costs, the loan to value on a number of things, and those caps are always in place. And so that's the most a lender will commit to purchase the property. Scope of work, we'll show you that. It's a detailed description of the work to be completed. Improvements, renovation costs, the total cost to improve the property, and that's based on the scope of work description and the itemized budget. Reno caps, renovation caps, that's the most a lender will commit to renovate the property, usually expressed as a percentage. And again, we'll show you that as we walk through a transaction and how to look at it. The renovation budget, that's a line item breakdown of all the materials used, including labor cost, and also including the quotes that go with it that you intend to use. The ARV, the after repair value, one of the most important figures in the transaction, and that's the appraiser's estimate of the fair market value of the property after the improvements are done. Meaning that we're going to take that scope of work, the renovation budget, we're going to give it to the appraiser. He's got the property as is, and the appraiser is going to determine, based on the quality of the materials and the amount of the work to be done, what that after repair value is. And you'll see later why that is the important number to start with. The ARV cap, and that's simply the most the lender would commit for the project based on that ARV. It overrides all other caps or limitations an investor will put on it. A good example, if I say I'm going to lend 70% of the deal and the project's going to be worth $100,000 when we're done, then 70 is the most I'm going to put into that deal. I'm going to back into how much I'm going to put towards the purchase and the renovations, but all in that ARV cap. You're talking to any investor about a deal like this, that's the number you want to get to with them. I've seen people say, we do 100% financing of all renos. And when you get down to it, yeah, if you're at 60% value of the ARV value, in other words, if it's, just a really heavy deal loaded with profit, they'll fund 100%. Draw schedule. You have to list out what you're going to put into a project, itemized, the different items, whether it's plumbing, electrical, flooring. But when are you going to spend it? You don't spend it all at once. You don't go out and do the flooring and the paint and the appliances before you do the roofing and the electrical and the plumbing. Draw schedule. Your loan to cost. That's the amount a lender is committed to lend for the project against the total cost of it. Sometimes you'll see that used instead of an ARV or in just a part of the transaction, maybe the purchase of it. Loan to cost cap. If there's any way to figure anything, there's going to be a cap on it. In other words, the most that you can go. Closing costs can range from 6 to 8% of the purchase price or more. Selling costs, real estate commissions, staging. Are you a licensed agent? You're going to do it all yourself, or you're going to have an agent working with you, and that can go from 3 to 9% of the sales price. So when you're doing a flip, you have a purchase cost and you have a selling cost. Financial leverage. And that's basically the use of borrowed funds to amplify the return of a project. And we'll talk a bit about that. And there's times when that may be the only way to really make a profit on a project. We're going to go through some of these and now use some of these examples and some of these terms and definitions and kind of walk through a process. We just covered most of the terms that are used. We're going to talk now about how a decision is made. As an investor, a lender, I'm going to back into it. I'm going to start with the ARV. So if the ARV on a deal, and we're going to use pretty much this basic deal all the way through these examples, we'll have a property that's going to be worth $255 when we're done. That's the ARV value. And if I say that I have a after repair ARV cap of 70% on that deal, the most I would lend on it all in would be $178.5. That's the maximum. And so if I've gotten that far in a decision, so now I've got a purchase and a renovation to disperse that money on. I think you'll find most people will do it this way, but not everybody. The way we do it is we're going to start with the renovation cost. If it's going to take $40,000 to renovate this property, and we say that we're going to contribute 100% of that, well, that means our reno cap is 40. We're good. We're okay there. So we're going to deduct that 40 from the 178.5 because we're spending that. We're committed over to the side. We know we're going to spend that amount on it. So now we get to the purchase acquisition price, 140 as is. Do we have enough left in our funds to cover 90% of that purchase price? 90% of 140 is 126. So from that ARV cap, we had 178.5 to work with. We used 40K for renovations, leaving 138.5, and we need 126 for the purchase. We have enough funds, right, left over, and with a little buffer left over, which is where you want to be. You do not want to take your deal to 100% of what it can be day one. Something always will pop up. So you see how we've used some of those definitions and terms just if I'm doing rough math on a transaction and I'm getting to what I believe I can do on it, that's exactly how I'm going to back into my numbers. I always start with that ARV. again, all these things have to be validated. Your budget, scope of work, the appraisal on the property will confirm that all that stuff is right. And sometimes you start in one place and at the end you wind up a little different. But that's the process that I'll go through in my head when I'm looking at a transaction. So the next part is, what is the process of the transaction itself? That I showed you real quickly how in our head we'll work on the deal and try to determine what we can do. But what is the actual process? We start with an application. Rarely does an investor or lender, going to give you that money on a handshake and not know anything about you. So an application is going to tell us all that. The financials to back that up. That would be the 2 months of whatever the funds is going to be, whatever you're going to need on the deal to show us you've got those funds in hand, and the reno budget. And a lot of times that's going to be, it's not quite finalized, but it's good enough and solid enough where we can move forward. When we do that, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to order appraisal with that budget, scope of work, and the property as is, and have the appraiser look at all that and tell us what that ARV is going to be. There's got to be some title work done, and you're going to need some insurance on the project while you're working on it. While that's being done, we're taking care of the remaining docs. We get a final approved. Everything's good. We're ready to fund the loan. That usually, if the financials and the reno budget are organized and presented well, we're going to do all that in 10 to 15 working days. That's review everything, getting the appraisal, the title, the insurance in place, lining up the closing and getting that all set and going. 10 to 15 working days. As the lender, we've done the hard part of our job. We've done our heavy lifting. Now whose turn is it? It's your turn. Generally, you're going to complete that in several draws. They're usually very small jobs, 1 draw, 2, 5, 6, 7 draws for large projects to complete it. And that can take, anywhere from 2 months to 7 or 8, 9, 10 months. Once that's done, if you're going to sell the property, closing time when you sell that property, you're going to pay off this transaction. If it's going to be a rental that you're going to keep, you're going to secure long-term financing. The property is going to be worth far more than you have into it. There should be more than enough equity there to do a rate and term refi just to get out of the existing short-term note into a long-term note. You see again how we've used a lot of these terms, right? Everything we went over, probably used some other ones too that we didn't talk about. Worksheets, we use something very similar to that as we're talking to somebody. We know the questions we're going to ask. We know the things we're looking for, and we're just going to plug that in. And so, I hope you've seen real quickly the definitions and terms, how we've used them. We've covered 15 terms and definitions. We've walked you through the decisioning process and the time frame that's involved. I want to open it up. I covered a heck of a lot of stuff there. Anybody have any questions? Anything you want me to talk more about or comment? You don't have to hit chat. You can just unmute if you have.
Yeah, can you hear me, Lee?
Yeah, Jonathan, yes.
Yeah, so I did have a question. When you talk about ARV, and I know what that is, how do you determine that? Are you doing a BPO or an appraisal when somebody comes to you for a loan, or using Zillow? How if you would elucidate on that a little bit?
It's a full appraisal. We're going to have the appraiser do 3 things. We're going to give us the as-is value. Then the appraiser is going to look at the scope of work and the budget that goes with it, quality of materials and what's being done. and then determine what the fair market AR value would be, the ARV, the after repair value. We're going to go off of that number.
All right. So, and the potential borrower buyer is the one that's responsible for the cost of the appraisal, or did your
Yes.
company cover it? Okay.
Yep.
All
Yes.
right. Thanks, Lee. Thank you.
Yeah. If you're doing the renovation, about the only out-of-pocket cost you'll have up front would be an appraisal. You may have to get a survey. It just depends on where you're at. Some of the transactions we require, some we don't. But just about everything else is you can take care of at the closing. But just like any mortgage transaction, you know, you're going to have an appraisal. Anybody else? Okay. Let me jump into another section here, if I can just look in the chat just to make sure there wasn't something there. So what we're going to do is take $200,000, buy a property that needs renovated, spend the money on the renovation and sell it. And we're going to look at that three different ways. The first one is we're going to pay 100% of cash out of our own pocket. We're going to do the flip with our own money. You know, a lot of times it might be friends and family money in there with you, but you're going to use your own money. The second one, you're going to partner with an investor who is going to lend you a good part of the money, charge you some interest on it, and share in your profit. I see a lot of those deals. And a lot of times that is the investor that's lending money out of his own pocket. It's what, you know, the terms are whatever they've decided it is today. And then the third one is going to be using the type of financing that we do, this newer sector that we were talking about, how to use leverage to finance it as opposed to taking on partners or using your own money. And we're just going to break down those three different ways of doing it. So the first one's pretty simple. Not that much math with this one, right? And we're going to use similar numbers that we did on that earlier example of a home that when we're done is going to be worth $255. We're going to buy it for $140. We're going to put $40,000 in it to improve it. You know, we'll have a little bit of closing cost on it, but not much because it's just going to be more of a quick private transaction. It's a cash deal. If you sell it for $255, you got $198,000 in it. You make $57,000. Is there anybody that would turn that down? No. I wouldn't turn it down. I'd do it today. If I wanted to put 198 into something, and in 3, 4, 5 months, I could walk away with 28, 20, almost 30% return. That's a good return. And that's how a lot of deals are done. With a partnership, it's a little different. And this is some of the average kind of deals that we see that people we know that flip do with partners. This isn't etched in stone. When you're working on a private deal with somebody investing with you, it's whatever you can decide the deal is. There is no one way to do a deal, but this is a pretty average deal that we see. With a partnership, you have half the expense and half the profit and half the risk, right? Now you're spreading the risk out with a partner. So in this deal, the investor says, I'll put up the money to buy the home. You pay the closing costs. So 140 to buy it, about $5,000 in closing costs. And that, the investor's just doing that part. You're going to pay interest on the money. And then you're responsible for the renovation. You're going to take care of the $40,000 renovation. If you do it this way, you're each going to walk away with about little over 24,000. But your return went way up because you risked much less of your own money, right? You only had just under 54,000 into this deal. You paid the closing costs, and you covered renovation, and you covered the interest on the loan out of that. And so you walked away with less cash, but your return was much higher, right? Third way to look at it. If you use financial leverage, the deal that we talked about a little earlier, where the investor is going to give you 90% towards the purchase price, give you 100% of the renovation. So you're going to have the down payment and your closing costs, your 14 grand down payment. We rough estimated the closing cost at about 7,900. The renovations are going to be covered by the investor. When you sell the property, you're going to have about 12,500 roughly in selling costs. Your total cost on this deal out of your pocket was about $31,000. And you walked away with 45,600. That's over 100% return on your money. It's the exact same deal, walk three different ways, and that's just the difference of using financial leverage, using a lot less of your money to increase your return. And there's times when, I mean, look, if you're sitting on a ton of cash and you have the 198 to 200 to put out and it doesn't bother you a bit, there's nothing wrong with a safe 30% return. And so I don't think one deal is always better than the other, but there's times when I think, especially the way things are going now, deals are getting harder to find. Properties are going up in value. If you look at the stats on flipping and profitability and return, the gross profit versus the return, gross profit is rising on flips nationwide. Return is shrinking on flips nationwide. And it's because over 60% of all flips are done using their own cash. So their chance of getting a better return is less than if they use leverage funds. Another way to look at it, what we call the one versus many. If I do one flip, I'm going to walk away with 57,000 with my 200 grand, and I'm going to have a 28% return. If I take my same 200 grand, I can do 4 flips using leverage with that because I'm just using a portion of my money. So the difference in return is, a ridiculous number. Not that you can do 4 flips at once unless you've been doing this a while. But it's, using your money versus using somebody else's money. We lightly call it, what do you do for a living? We rent money. And that is I think one of the primary benefits, the return and spreading the risk. I think it's a true statement to say that using financial leverage can increase your ROI. I'm going to cover 2 more things and then do a couple of more, just open it up for questions. The first one is, we talked about scope of work and a renovation budget. What does it look like? It's easy for me to say, give me a scope of work. What am I going to ask you for? What do I want to see from you? What does any investor want to see from you? In this one, we've described the renovation to be done. We've outlined how the funds would be used, and we've defined the draws. Draws 126,000 to purchase. First draw of 11,000, second draw of 56, third draw of 11,700, fourth draw, final draw, total draws, estimated time 4 to 5 months. Draw 1 will cover, and then, you itemize everything. 2 will cover, you itemize. 3 will cover. Scope of work. We're purchasing a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Deltona, Florida, Volusia County for $140,000. The square footage is 1,650. We will invest $40 in the renovation, mostly kitchen, baths, floors, and paint. All appliances and finishes will be moderate to middle cost, a total of 5 draws. You know, there's a little table there showing some of those same things. That's a well thought out scope of work. You do not have to give 5 pages. You don't have to describe what you're doing every day. That you have to paint the picture for the person on the other end who wants to write you the check to help you do this, understand, you know, what you're trying to do. And look, I've met some successful flippers who hold up proudly the napkin and say, it all goes on here, man. That's all I do. That's okay if you're spending your money and you're doing that. That's okay. But if you're spending somebody else's money, you can't do that. I wouldn't have much faith in somebody doing that because you can't always fly by the seat of your pants. So what does a budget look like? How detailed is it? What does a draw schedule look like? How accurate do these things need to be? What I'm going to do here, the file that I would need to show you is an Excel file, which displays really poorly. So what I'm going to do is I just recorded a short video walking you through it so you could see the screen better. This is about a 3-4 minute video walking you through a budget for the project we were looking at, walking you through the budget, how we carry that over to a draw schedule to make sense, and then how we carry that over to a financial snapshot of the deal. If this has problem displaying, just hit me up and let me know here. Okay, let's go over a couple of important things. One is, what does a budget look like? How detailed should the budget be? The answer is very detailed. Here we're going to go through a sample budget. It's not exactly accurate. I've tried to fill it out with decent estimates of the type of money we would spend on the project we've been talking about. So I've spent about $40,000 in improvements, and I've covered floors, kitchens, plumbing and bath, hardware fixtures, electrical, interior paint, doors, framing and windows, the exterior improvements, foundation and framing, heating and air, general conditions, different things like architectural plans, demolition, dump fees, etc. Those things are all going to be there. Some additional fees that may happen. You see here we arrived at a figure of $40,000, like the example we've been talking about. We're purchasing the property for $140,000, and we believe it's going to sell for $255,000 as an after repair value. So once we have the budget worked out, where we're going to spend the money, now we have to talk about when we're going to spend the money. So if we carry that budget over, as we went through, everything here is the same budget, but we plan on when we're going to spend it. You're not going to put in your floors first. You're not going to put in your appliances first. You're not going to buy your countertops and have them put in first. You're going to take care of things like plumbing, those types of things first. If you have to repair any subfloor, electrical, you're going to have to take care of those things first. You have to plan it out. You have to know what you're going to have done in what order so that it's done in the correct order. You don't want to put in all your flooring and then find out you have to tear it up because there's something in the subfloor that's wrong. It does happen. Once you go through that budget and you know, for example, you're going to have 3 draws, you know when they're going to be, and you know the amounts they're going to be. That's good management of your money. The other part is looking at the financial picture overall. What is the ARV? It's $255,000. What's the most the investor would get involved with this? If it's 75% of the ARV, that's $191,250. For example, if it is 70% of the ARV, that's going to be 178.5. There's still room. You see here, we still have a 12.5 buffer. If we're buying the home for 140, we're putting in 40 in improvements. If the investor is going to pitch in 126 of that, that means you have to bring 14 to the table plus your closing costs. So here's a good breakdown that you can manage very easily to see what your return is going to be based on your interest rate, your points, investor participation, and the most important thing is how long is it going to take you to do this deal? So with 6 months from the time you close the loan till the time you sell the property and pay it off, or if your intention is to rent it, stabilize it, and then refinance it, whatever that is, if that's 6 months from the date, this is roughly the profit scenario you would have if you sold the property for $255. So you see here your total, $33,930 is your total out-of-pocket investment. Your 14 at the table for down payment, and the remainder are carrying costs, closing costs, and 6 months worth of interest. If you change that and said, okay, instead of getting this deal done in 6 months, we're going to get it done in 4 months. Now, what you want to watch is the difference between your total carrying costs and your return on your investment. We've changed it from 6 to 4. It makes a difference in how much money you make. I hope that makes sense. I hope this quick review of what a budget and a draw schedule and how you should look at your overall picture of your project at all times should be. Okay, I hope that wasn't too painful. By the way, that is an Excel worksheet that we put together internally that we use. If you would like a copy of that you can use over and over again, just drop your name and your email address in chat, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it. We don't sell it. We only give it away to friends and clients. We use it internally a lot on deals to help us figure out where we are. So if you'd like a copy of it, just let me know and I'll be glad to get it to you. Any questions on anything we've covered, or any questions you have about doing a flip, or are you knee deep in a flip and need some advice? Any questions at all, we're open. Sean, Miguel, I see Edward, good to see you. I see, I'll get that to you. Yep, Joe, I see you're looking for it. Anybody have any questions on anything? It's a quiet crowd for a Saturday morning. If you think of something, just interrupt. To recap a bit what a flip was, what it is, it's a short-term renovation loan, a bridge loan, usually 9 to 18 months. Most of what we've talked about, by the way, goes for 1 to 4 family properties. Our program also goes up to 12 units on the same program. So a lot of people cut 1 to 4. That's primarily what we've talked about. When it goes to 5+, it changes just a little bit, but it is available for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 unit apartment units also. Again, everything is titled to an entity. You need those formation docs, proof of funds, no W-2s, no tax returns, no bank statements. I'm sorry, we do need bank statements, no tax returns, no W-2s. The workshops we do, here's a partial list. We have a really good one on using Reels for real estate. The Google business profile, do you have one? Have you looked at what Google has for you in the profile? Google your business name, Google your company name, and see what comes up on the right-hand side. That's what they have about you. That is free for you to manage. Put as much up there as you want. Most people don't even know it's there. And it is one of the key things Google uses to identify you as somebody important in local search. We do a great workshop on that. The next generation of home buyers, video marketing for real estate, database marketing. The next one we have coming up is a real important one with what's going on in the market. It's embracing the shift, how to thrive in a changing real estate market, how to answer those tough questions buyers and sellers are asking. What are some of the best strategies to use in this kind of unusual market? Do you know that 75% of everybody involved in real estate today has never seen a 7 and 8% rate environment ever? Their parents have seen it, but they haven't. There are a lot of things, we call them old school tactics, things that we did 15, 20, 30 years ago that are going to come back because of the rate environment and are needed. We're going to talk about some of those things that have real value today. That is going to be November 1st, 10:30. You can use that QR code. It'll take you right to it to sign up for it. I'd love to see you there. You have any other questions, feel free to jump in and ask. If you want to talk privately about either any of the workshops or about financing or anything we do, the QR code on the right puts you to our Calendly. That is my direct number there, 407-871-6801. Either one of those QR codes will get you to the designation if you want to sign up for Embracing the Shift. The one on the left, and if you'd like to have a conversation, the one on the right. We always try to keep our workshops to an hour or less. We are right at about 55 minutes. So we've put a lot into this one as far as what we crammed into a short period of time. So I'm open for questions. If you think of anything later, you can always email. It's lee.walsh@radarmortgage.com, or feel free to give me a call or hit me up on chat with that number. Joe, Latanya, Jeff, Maria, I will make sure you get that, and you're welcome. If there are no other questions, I'm going to call it a Saturday morning and let you guys get on with your weekend. And again, I appreciate you all joining me on a Saturday morning. Thank you much. Enjoy your weekend.